Okay, so after we met in Kroger's and you asked, why don't you do a little writing? What'd you say in there?
Yes, to write
I
an
can't hear you
outline.
hardly.
Yes, to write out like an outline
Yeah,
about the
outline. And
purpose
what
and
did
the
I
direction.
say?
No, 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 no,
No,
no.
no, no,
Mm-hmm.
no, no.
Right.
By inspiration, like in Kroger's. And
Mm-hmm.
then we talked about when was the last time there was a conversation. Well, I won't go into that.
I
That's
think you
too
just did.
boring. Okay, so anyway, yeah, no notes. But as I was sitting there getting ready to come up here today, or I was on my way, I knew I would be on my way. This thought came to mind, and I thought you might like this. And the thought came to mind because it was like what I believed would be, could be, might be, what came to mind as being an intent of, say, the heart that we might both agree on with your background and your experience and your profession and what you've done, and I think it reads you too, for what the intent that we both have is. Mm-hmm. And to state that intent, might be a good thing. So yes. Like if it's the first video, what's their purpose? What are they doing this for?
Exactly.
Well, right. There's an intent. And of course, this is just off the top of my head, it just came to me to write this down.
Good.
And then I thought, yeah, Bob will like this. He'll kind of agree. I was guessing, but here it is. So I wrote down, as like you see, topic here.
Oh, yeah.
And then I wrote that here because I wanted to ask you about what you did like this.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay, so our heart's intent is to be an aid, a vehicle, rather than being people that can convince people of anything, or that we're going to tell them the way it is. Because people have to discover stuff on their own, right?
It's the only real learning.
Yes, the only real learning. They have to see it and understand it for themselves. And the best that we could ever do, maybe it seems to me, is to hope and believe in the heart that. So then you're being genuine, and you're maybe a vehicle, or like a tool, or like an aid, or like a help that might say things that register then, tomorrow, 5 or 10 years from now. We don't know. But it's our best attempt to be like an aid, a vehicle, like a mediator between what would be great for people to understand, like a higher, above, that which is maybe more powerful than the humans. And certainly anyone that says it because they're saying it and they mean they're not and something else is. And a person can possibly, could be a vehicle of that, or an aid from that to another person that doesn't understand us or gets it from us, but, hey, look, let me show you, let me do my best to show you something I think might help you, rather than we're helping them and we're the answer people. So anyway, that was the idea, meaning as a vehicle, like a mediator between this above and them.
Yes.
Maybe, hopefully, but that's the intent anyway. Or a counselor, or even like a negotiator, because like negotiating between this and them, being like a medium in between, with listening to them and letting the best feedback come out of us for that higher thing that could help them. Yes. So that's what I wrote. That as a counselor or a negotiator, or negotiating as a navigator, like
yes.
in life.
Yes, a guide. Yes.
Yeah, like a guide. But then here's how things start. Well, anyway, there's a verse that goes line upon line, precept upon precept. Have you ever heard that?
No.
It's a verse. It's a Bible verse. It's out of the Bible. And it's like speaking of progressive or learning or growing.
Yeah.
Line upon line, precept upon precept. And precept, meaning like principle or rule or a governing wisdom like thing. Yeah. precept. So it's not like words in a line that you have to understand each word and know this word, line, like read a line. But line in this context means more to me like precept because it is line upon line, precept upon precept. So the word precept should go along with the word line, which makes the line mean a little bit more than just a line like a sentence,
Right.
because it's more like what a precept is, and a precept is a principle. It's not a line.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway,
Yeah.
there's that verse, and their principles governing from above is representing that which is on high, of that which is higher, on high, as in high heavens, like anyway. So love's truth, degraded. Oh, so the idea too then, what struck me was that people are so reliant on words, and words have definitions. And to me, what I was seeing after having wrote that first thing about the intent was that words will degrade this higher value because they have definitions,
Yes.
and those definitions and those words are worldly learned words.
Yes.
With definitions that are worldly functional, which then degrades that higher above thing.
Yes, I understand.
So then it just went from this to like love's truth for degraded, brought down, decimated, destroyed, denigrated by the idea that we're to know something by knowledge, to know words, like the definition of words, will then denigrate, decimate, bring down that wisdom into nothing but another worldly, word by word definition, worldly defined thing, which kind of ruined it. Denigrate, bring down, lowering, debasing wisdom's understanding.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have this line that we read it is a verse that it muddies the pure, clean, sparkling life or water, the waters of wisdom that give life, adulterating wise understanding, darkening the water with words which inherently equal a definition in usage.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea of to know the definition of words that darken the wisdom through the use of the words, and people trying to hear what you say by their worldly idea of what the definition of the word is. That's like why there's no escape from a person being able to use words and tell somebody how to help them, compared to the fact that something higher's got to work on them to take the words as a vehicle, even the words themselves,
Right.
out of the worldly
Right.
definition and out of the limit in the muddying of the water that is. Because there's this line almost everybody knows and has heard. It's called, "Now I see through a glass darkly." That's like a famous Bible verse. Now, in this life, I see through a glass darkly, like muddied water, and it's unclear and not pure. With the idea of later, I will see it as it is, or I will see him, Christ, as he is.
Mm-hmm.
But now in the flesh, in the world, I see through a glass darkly.
I understand.
Yeah. So, anyway, it was just in recognition of this usage of words to try to do anything of value, and you can't. Here's what I think the result of this is: you can't expect to help somebody with words. You know, as humans using words, talking to somebody who only understands through the use of words with worldly definitions,
Mm-hmm.
can't hardly help them above and beyond the issues and the problems that are a circumstance or a result of living in a world where people are ill or messed up or abusive or using each other, or where evil is some part of, you know, what's in a person with their interactions, rather than being completely pure. Well, to have to know, or knowledge, to have it like we own it, to, you know, to make it or remake it ours, because we learn something we know by words, and then we make it ours like we own it. Now it even kind of gets worse because it's something we own. It isn't this higher thing that we respect and that we appreciate and we adore and we worship and we look to in order to escape the issues in the, not escape, but say, hopefully, maybe mature or grow up beyond and past the limitations that have been literally stacked upon us from the day of our birth, when we have no choice but to go along to get along, to appease, to adapt to a world that's selfish, or pride based. Uh, and in adapting to it, we adopt it. We end up adopting it. And then it becomes who we think we are. We take it and we adapt. And as we're adapting and growing up adapting, getting along to go along, fitting in, we literally have adopted a role of the world in the world. Living in the world, we've adopted a role of the world. And by this, we've become tarnished and denigrated and degraded by the limits and the lack of truth and the lack of an intent of heart to give and to love and truth through the world's way of, knowing things and learning things to get along, kind of for selfish reasons, even though you have to do it to survive, it's still not like a pure love thing. It's like, I've got to learn this to get along in a world that's kind of rough like a jungle. So, like, learning the ways of the jungle isn't something you want to necessarily be. Yeah, I want to be a ruthless animal in the jungle to get along in the jungle, but I don't want to be stuck in the jungle as an animal.
Understood.
So,
There's a certain amount of common sense that's involved in the context.
Of?
Well, your example of being in the jungle, common sense would suggest that it would be a good idea to learn the ways of being in the jungle in order to survive. It's another thing altogether, though, is to take on that identity.
Yeah.
So, and destroying the true identity through that.
But the adapting is taking on that role. They're one and the same.
Yeah, agreed.
Can't adapt without taking on a role, because it's the role that fits in the play. And the play is the survival in the jungle. So when I went through this and came to this and ended up where this goes in just one more page, I ended up going, what can we even really do? I was like stuck with, it's so limited what we can do. Because here again, we're the vehicle, like,
I think you put your finger on a very important issue.
I don't know what happened. I have no idea.
Oh, you mean on the computer?
Yeah, it's not there.
Oh, there it is.
Oh, there it is. How about that? I wonder if it's still going.
Is there a time limit?
I don't know. No, it is still going. Look, 13:17. Okay. I guess it just goes on its own. We're just learning. Okay.
Aren't we? Always.
So what were you saying?
I was saying that let's use Bible verse as example. Any Bible or any verse of anything.
Okay.
That if one thinks that knowing those words will provide a true knowledge or true wisdom, one has been seriously deceived, self-deceived. Just as you're suggesting, the words or the verses, properly understood, serve as the vehicle or facilitator of, I guess the word would be inspired, to awaken or to discover, to take the cover off. So it's not so much the idea of, for example, memorizing all the words and verses and so forth and think that one now knows it. It's more that can these words be used as a vehicle through which an awakening to the true reality occurs.
No doubt.
Let's not confuse the wrapping for the gift.
No doubt. And when I hear somebody preaching and teaching, so to speak,
That's
as though
all it
they're
is.
going to inform people, and they'll say a sentence and then they'll literally quote or write 2 to 5 to 6 or 7 books with a chapter number and a verse number, as though somebody's going to go now look all these things up to fully understand what the person's trying to convey in the last sentence, with 5 different just chapter numbers and verse numbers
Right.
behind it. Drives me like, what is wrong with this person? The religious sense of self-worth has grabbed a hold of them and thrown them in the dumpster.
Right. They can deceive, self.
It's not good. I don't. Nobody's going to follow all that. Look up every chapter number and verse after they say a single sentence, as though that's their way of saying, "Look, let me prove to you that I know what I'm talking about."
And I think that's not what the real purpose is, but rather that these words and verses are to awaken an internal and interior understanding. It's not the word, it's not the noise of the word and verse itself. It's more the word and verse can serve as a facilitator, or serve to facilitate the inner awakening. The hearer of the verse, though, does need to be in I think, a state of readiness in order for that awakening to occur.
Well, that's true too.
You say these words to, well, like you said, like someone who just spouts off all the words, just a lot of noise, unless the hearer is in a state of readiness to use those words and verses to have the awakening. Is that what you were getting at?
Well, yeah, it's like that. Yeah, it's another way of saying it. Yeah, in a way, it's. I don't think we can be anything but almost limited by words.
It's just gross conformity again.
Pretty much. And then to believe that you know the words and what somebody's talking about because you know the definitions of the words they're using.
Well, therein lies the reality that a know-it-all will ultimately render himself a fool.
There's a verse which goes, and I'll just use the few words of it: the foolishness of preaching.